Welcome to another week of Brew Skies Booze News. It is cold and snowy and frigid as hell in Cincinnati, where I am, Mike Morgan. And this other cat is where the hell are you, Bret?
I am in Palm Springs Desert, California.
You dick.
It has been a balmy 76 degrees all week with lows into the 60s, and that has been about the best thing of the trip. I don't know if you've ever been to Palm Springs, Mike,
I
but
haven't. I saw that movie, and the whole time machine thing kind of freaked me out. So I was a little afraid, but mostly I was afraid of the prices.
the prices are outrageous here. That movie was great. Nothing about this has been that experience, though. It is
You
the
haven't found the
strangest
time
place I've
machine?
been. No, there's no time machines, no caves, no dinosaurs, no big parties, no celebrities. It's just a bunch of overpriced restaurants,
Mm-hmm.
no dive bars in sight,
Sure.
a shitload of CPAs, tax accountants, retirement helpful people, real estate agents, and a bunch of hotels. It is,
It sounds
and the
pretty
city,
awful.
and the city itself is filled with a lot of old people, a lot of boomers just looking to dehydrate themselves out in an effort to try to live
Mm-hmm.
longer. And it's just fucking weird, man. It's just real weird.
You know, it's one of those places. I haven't been there, but I went to Sonoma, or Sedona, rather, the one in Arizona, which, and I'd wanted to go to Sedona for a long time. It's one of those places like Palm Springs that people talk about as so amazing. Oh my God, it's so great. I hated it. Like the landscape was gorgeous, and I assume it's the same thing there. And the hiking trails were spectacular if you got there at 7 o'clock in the morning, but they were packed. The trails were packed. The town itself looked like Gatlinburg, except
Mm-mm.
uglier. It was completely walking hostile. It was just very car centric and a lot of strip malls and shit architecture. And I was like, man, really? Like, this is what you people have been talking about all this time?
Yeah, it seems like anytime something really touristy takes hold, the soul of the place that made it great originally leaves, and then you can't find cheap drinks anywhere.
Right. I'm guessing that Sedona and Palm Springs were really cool in the 70s,
I bet they
probably even
were.
the
They were probably
80s.
bitching.
Yeah. Like Key West. Like Key West in the 70s, 80s. I bet that was a really good time. Now it's just a lot of douchebaggery and Disney cruises and nonsense.
Yes. Well, on that note, that is a good tie into what the question of the day is. We want to know what your most disappointing city that you visited is, because that was two good ones from us. And as always, the best way you can support us is liking, commenting, subscribing, sharing, more importantly. And if you really want to get crazy, head over to Patreon, buy us a pint of beer, $5 a month. That's it. And we have content, Patreon only content now. Great stuff. It's Mike and I were just revisiting it the other day at the best of Dan, and we were like, shit, we have to get this up. So we're excited to get that on there, and there should be a lot more coming. Now, you ready to get into this, Mike?
Let's do it.
So there's been some big news this week. Actually, several big things. And the first of which I know you are going to be just pleased as punch about, Mike. The Diddy saga. It is over. It is over.
Yeah, I'm not pleased. I was really hoping for an ongoing, exhaustive war of attrition there, and so I'm really sad that they settled that.
I think it has been exhausting for Diddy. I'm guessing because he wasn't making money, he's probably out of money and took any settlement that Diageo was willing to throw at him.
Well, those whole rape lawsuits, they tend to have a way of draining you. You can ask a certain former president.
There's not much information that has been divulged about the Sean Diddy Combs lawsuit, other than that they've settled. So, uh, Diageo is taking over ownership over De Leon. Combs has been cut out and completely, and he's no longer going to be doing any work or getting any money from them. So Diageo's failed attempt to replicate Casamigos with Puff Daddy, unsuccessful. So
Well,
that's
in
that.
seriousness, I mean, from a negotiation standpoint, when you're accused of multiple rapes, it tends, and the only thing that you're bringing to the table of value is your name. That tends to really kind of weaken your negotiation position. So I'm
Yeah, and
sure Diddy walked away not happy.
yeah, I don't think Rohypnol manufacturers need a spokesperson, but
Right.
there's not much opportunity left for him.
Yeah. But I mean, he's out there for that. I don't know. I mean, who is the good, who is the roofie spokesperson? It could be Diddy.
It could be Diddy. It
Yeah.
could. He's got experience, allegedly. In other big corporate news, Drizzly, one of the first companies to focus on direct alcohol delivery, has shut down. Uber bought them out 2 years ago for $1.2 billion,
So like
and
DoorDash for booze.
DoorDash for just booze, and Uber's shutting the whole thing down. It's
They
only
paid
been
how
two
much
years.
for it?
1.2 billion.
Whew. Well, congrats to the Drizzly guys who cashed in and got out on time.
Yeah, it's this is an interesting story because it's a blunder. They bought it in the height of the pandemic when people were getting everything delivered to their house and probably overpaid for it. And then they're shutting it down 2 years later because it doesn't make sense to run it as a separate company. Now, part of this that doesn't really get talked about that I think is beneficial for Uber is the fact that they still own the infrastructure of Drizzly. They still bought all the permitting. They still figured out all the legal requirements. And Uber Eats, the delivery version for Uber, is still delivering alcohol. So really, to me, it sounds like really they just bought IP, not necessarily customer base. So did they actually overpay 1.2 billion? Probably, but these tech companies are stupid as hell anyway, and things are inflated and ridiculous. So I guess I'm not
It sounds,
surprised.
yeah. It sounds to me like they mostly grossly overpaid for a lot of legal services. But yeah, I can see there's still being value there. You just tack it onto Uber Eats. And in fact, you order food from a bar and beers come with it. Why not? They
Yes.
probably work better together.
Well, frankly, I don't understand the appeal of Uber Eats and any of those anyway. We've talked about this before. It just
Yeah.
doesn't make sense. You're getting ripped off at every step of the process, and no one is getting paid well except for that company that is delivering the food. They're just taking advantage of laziness.
Yeah, the only way it really works for me is when I'm drunk. So, if you add the booze part to it, then it actually makes more sense. If I'm too drunk to drive to the restaurant, then Uber Eats makes sense. And while you're at it, pick up another 12 pack on the way, please.
Maybe America is just way more drunk than I thought they were. I need to give us more credit. We're just all
Uh,
fucking
I
hammered.
I think lazier, Brett.
Well, speaking of bad tasting things, Sweetwater, who makes the 420 ale, they got bought out by Tilray, which is the
Mm.
cannabis company. They have announced that they are tripling down on their Gummies line of IPAs. Now, you're probably not familiar with these because you don't drink just balls tasting beer, but the
No.
Gummies line is artificially sweetened, artificially flavored, high alcohol IPAs targeted at children and alcoholics.
Great. That
Oh,
sounds disgusting.
it is. And the reason I bring it up is because they're basically saying we don't see any road to success as a traditional craft brewery. The only thing we can do is try to mimic Voodoo Ranger, but take it to the next level of extreme. where we're going to make IPAs, high alcohol, and just throw a bunch of flavors at it and hope it sells. I don't think it's innovative. I think it's lazy. I think it's short-sighted. And I think, frankly, it's doing a massive disservice to craft beer.
It sounds like all of that, and it's another kind of sad example of a decline of a brewery. There were, I think, some kind of skeevy things about Sweetwater from the beginning, but their original lineup of beers were pretty good. They were making some really solid beers. I would assume what is forward looking in that transaction is that they're going to start pumping THC into the beers as soon as it's legal for them to do that.
It does seem like they were primed for that. They probably have a hemp license, I would imagine, already. And as soon as they get legal federally, yeah, I think that you're exactly right. Tilray's been doing that. They've been buying up breweries across the country sporadically, what looks like sporadically, but really it's logical distribution based purchases. And Sweetwater having what was lazy and tired cannabis based branding from the very beginning just seems like a natural fit
Right.
for Tilray to scoop it up. So I think you hit the nail on the head. They're just priming the market for those THC beverages. Do you see that going anywhere? Do you see THC beverages upsetting the apple cart in a major way?
I don't see it in a major way, but I do think that the younger you get from a generational standpoint, the more weed you smoke versus drink. I mean, the more you smoke weed versus the more you drink alcohol. So, I can see it being a market. I don't think that it's going to be a revolution. I don't think that it's going to be the thing that craft breweries should really be frightened about. But, it's going to be some disruption, I think.
Yeah, yeah. I think the best thing for on premise and existing bars and restaurants is that we just see a nice uptick of these cannabis beverages. They have some nice properties to them. They're quick onset. You kind of process them a little bit faster than traditional edibles. So I could see a world where this bar has a full lineup of spirits and beers and things on draft. And then they also have a lineup of THC beverages. So if you want to, however you want to consume, you're able to consume. I don't want to see the Amsterdam model where you have cafes and then you have bars and it's two different things. I kind of like the intermingling. I want friends. I want to go out with my friends. And if they don't consume alcohol and I don't consume cannabis, I want to be able to go to the same place.
Right, right. I think what's most important is that the closer we get to November 2024 and everything that comes after, we're all going to want to be fucking wasted. I think that we should just have as many options as possible. We're going to need to avoid reality increasingly.
Well, I've been increasingly diving into conspiracy rabbit holes as a result of the Democrats' ineffectual ability to do anything positive for the people of this country. So the only thing that makes sense to me is that they want Trump to win and they want to ruin the economy so they can roll out some type of new mind control crypto-based currency. It's the only thing that makes sense to me.
Sure. I mean, incompetence would be another theory, but conspiracies are a lot more fun.
Don't blame to incompetence that what you can blame to a conspiracy. Isn't that the same?
Absolutely. I think that's the saying. I think that's Occam's razor that when there's a simple explanation, definitely the 17 part conspiracy version is going to be the truth.
We know people are good at keeping secrets. So
yeah.
We've talked about this in the past as well, but Modelo is the number one beer in the country. Tequila is the number one spirit in the country. Mm-hmm. And, the Mexican
Build that wall!
The Mexican influence is apparent in our country, and I am here for it. I love the food. I love the drinks. I love the people. It's good stuff. So there's this brand called Rupee Beer that's basically taking the same concept of Modelo or Pacifico or Corona, but applying it to Indian Americans. Indian Americans from the Asian continent, not Native Americans. For older listeners out there who might be confused. So it's really interesting that it's not actually a good beer. It's just called Rupee Beer. It's got some slick branding, and it's just a shit lager. They call it a premium lager, but we all know that means that's code for shit. And it's crushing. They're absolutely crushing it. The company started in Maine, which I didn't realize there's a big Indian American population in Maine, but it's grew 200% last year, and they're looking to double that again this year. So, Mike, what do you think about this? Are we heritage-based branding? Do you think this trend is going to continue? Are we going to see every country ex-American is going to get its own line of beer?
The whole thing is actually mystifies me, to be honest. Those Indian beers, I love Indian food, and I've had Indian beers in Indian restaurants, and they suck. You know, they're usually rice-based, just like shitty Japanese beers and Chinese beers. They're all fucking terrible. But, you know, when we look at the trends in beer, and you brought this up last week, I think, the only thing that's really crushing it is imports. And when we're talking about imports, we're not talking about really good complex Belgians or amazingly good classic German styles. We're talking about piss beer from Mexico and Canada and now India. And so I don't get this whole fascination with why you pay more for a foreign beer that's just a Budweiser.
That's a great point. And another reason why I dislike Palm Springs, fucking Stella is everywhere. And every time I ask them what good beers they have, they're like, oh, we got Stella. Did you hear me? I said good beers, not shit that they call wife beater beer in fucking the UK, man.
Yeah, Stella has done a brilliant job of marketing. But I'm sure that all of the bridal parties that come through Palm Springs, you know, Stella's one of those beers that has really taken off big with women like millennial women love that beer for whatever reason. You know, the marketing seems to have hit there the hardest. So I don't know why, but whatever. It does seem to track with what I believe about Palm Springs. Although I've never been there, and I still believe that there's a time machine. So what do I know?
Don't find out the answer. You don't need to. It just doesn't. Yeah. It's not there.
I think the time machine is there, though, Brett. I think you just need to look harder.
No, that I'll buy. I'll buy that conspiracy theory. I'm really wondering what the next person to jump on this trend is going to be. Who's going to come up with the next, like, is there going to be Canadian American beer that comes out next, and it's going to be called like A beer A?
Well, Labatt's is a fine, drinkable yellow beer. And
that's true.
There are parts of the U.S. where they sell the hell out of Labatt's, and it's the same thing. Why? It's not as big as Corona, but there is a mystique around Mexican culture in this country, and it's an odd thing to me that you find it. I heard some stat this week, which I wish I could remember, but Mexican restaurants are the most common form of restaurants now. And with millennials, it was the first generation where, like, you know, the go-to restaurant used to be Italian. Like, there was red sauce Italian everywhere. And with millennials, I believe it's the first time where, you know, the preference went from your basic Italian restaurant, like that was the default, to Mexican. And there are Mexican restaurants everywhere, and it's amazing those places that you go to where, you know, you pass the Trump build a wall signs and, to get to the Mexican restaurant, by the Mexican restaurant, and everybody loves them and they're all packed. So there is this kind of mystique around all of that. I think more of like a faux pseudo Mexican-American kind of culture, but there's some panache to that it isn't connected to Canada. But I don't know. I don't understand people anymore. I don't
That's a
feel at home in
great
this
point.
world anymore, Brett.
That's a great point. Two good points that I really liked. One, the fact that you can go into any MAGA country area in this country, and you'll find Mexican restaurants. It's hilarious that like these people are like, I don't respect you as a person, but I'm going to eat the
Right.
shit out of your food. I'm going to trust you to
Yeah.
make it good.
Yeah.
That's
Bring
insane.
me bring me a second helping before I have you deported.
Bring me the goddamn quesadillas.
Yeah.
The other thing is that you really hit the nail on the head. As a millennial, I don't give a shit to go to an Italian restaurant again as long as I live. I don't know that nothing about it does it for me, but I'll go to any fucking cheap restaurant that serves Mexican food anywhere in this country. So that was interesting that the it's swapped like that so much. Uh,
Yeah.
the next thing we got is Bud Light. They're back in the news.
Thank God. I missed you, Bud Light.
Well, the good news here is that you're going to see a lot of them at the Olympics because they're the first ever beer sponsor of the Olympics, and they signed a 3-year deal for the Summer Olympics plus the Paralympics. So I don't get it. I don't get the move personally. What are you going to be like?
Anheuser-Busch historically, one of their big things from a marketing standpoint was sports connection, sports advertising, and sponsorship of sports teams. It was something that they invested in ultra heavily in the 1980s. I think that they're just pulling that out of the playbook, and given the given the nature of the whole Bud Light controversy, I can see them getting, I don't know, uber sportsy in a broad kind of way.
That makes
I
sense.
hope they just lose a lot of money on it.
No, that's pretty astute. They tried to innovate. They tried to reach out to a new audience. Didn't work for them. Blew up in their face. So they're saying, "Fuck it. Let's open up the playbook. Look at what worked for us in the past, and just do that again." But in 2024,
Yeah.
yeah, that makes sense. It's a boring play, but it's probably going to work. It's probably going to work.
It's not a company that you're going to see innovation come from.
No, you can't get that big and still innovate. It's just not.
No.
There's just too much risk. Clearly, they just lost 30% of their company value, so they know better now. Last thing I got for us is that women ages 21 to 34
Love them.
are, don't we all? They're not drinking craft beer. They're not drinking craft beer. They're drinking other things. Can you guess the top 3 things that they're drinking instead of craft beer?
Vodka and seltzer and white wine.
Actually, wine was at the bottom of the list, but seltzer, spirits, then cheap beer is the top 3 choices.
Really? They're drinking more cheap beer than craft beer.
I think the Stella thing is what it is.
Yeah. Yes. They're all drinking Stella. God damn it.
Well, as a reminder, check out our Patreon for special content. Answer your question of the day, which is, what is your most disappointing city that you've been to? Mike and I gave you our answers at the top. And I mean, Mike, I don't know if you want to hit an on-out story, if you just want to wrap it up here, but that's all I got.
Yeah, we can wrap it up here. You know, I mean, we have had a week that looks like so many other weeks. There's political news. There's war news. Who the fuck wants to talk about it? And when you're back, I think the question next week should be, what is the city that you loved that you didn't expect to love?
I like that.
Because it does go both ways. And yeah, for me, there are a few that are big disappointments, but I'll go back to where we started there. Sedona, I fucking hate it. It is obscenely overrated.
You know, on that note, I'm going to throw in an honorable mention that I think we share a similar feeling about. Asheville is quickly turning into a disappointing city.
Yeah, it used to be really cool, but yes, Asheville is now uber douchey. It's sad. Very
It is.
sad. People tell me all the time, Asheville used to be cool. Now it's not. Well, Brad, I hope you enjoy getting hammered on Stella. And I hope you find that time machine. And if you do, would you please go back to, let's say, the mid 80s? Find me and talk some fucking sense into me. Because if I had it all to do over, I'd do most of it different.
I'll see what I can
Love you
do, Mike.
guys. Have a good week.
Cheers.